the show where we talk about bringing peace and calm into your life. We're live at KCSB FM Santa Barbara 91.9. And KCSB is a platform for cultural expression and thoughtful discussion, providing a diverse educational forum. And I'm a Santa Barbara-based clinical psychologist, and I specialize in pediatric neuropsychology. During my training and my current work, I've treated thousands of people, and I want to share my experiences with you. I'm also a UCSB alumni, and I live locally in Santa Barbara. And this show's all about our community and how to create compassionate conversations about our well-being and health. Today on the show, we're going to be talking actually about a couple different things. We're going to be talking about mental health and well-being with a focus on sexual abuse and sexual assault with our very special guest, Cheyenne Thies. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did.
And also we have a second special guest, which actually is a musician. So we're going to kind of talk about a couple different topics, and that's Carly Joe. So we're going to cover sexual abuse and sexual assault, but we're also going to be talking about music. And the first guest I want to introduce is Cheyenne Thies. She's 22. And her partner, Ella Fairon, who actually unfortunately can't be here. She's 21 because she has the flu today. But Cheyenne and Ella are survivors of sexual abuse and sexual assault, and they're fighting the stigma of being a victim and pushing to empower survivors rather than silence them. And this is in the hopes to help other victims, and they've started a podcast called Savage Survivors, and that is premiering early April of 2019. And that podcast is going to spread awareness of the reality of what it is like to experience sexual assault, as well as the raw recovery process. And Ella, her partner, is featured in the Netflix documentary Audrey and Daisy. And then our second guest, Carly Joe, has a vocal tone that is very infectious and charismatic, and her voice definitely turns heads, and her energetic stage performance invites the audience to stay for more. And she has performed at small, intimate venues, large concert stages such as Milwaukee's Summerfest. She's also appeared on national television and has had her music featured in commercials and short films. Carly's critically acclaimed song and music videos and recordings focus is kind of like an indie vibe, right?
Yeah, kind of like pop.
So anyhow, we're really excited to have both Cheyenne and Carly. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
So you've got two people to share their experiences, and also I thought it would be really nice because I know I'm a lot older than probably most of the UCSB people, although I know lots of people of a wide variety of ages listen. But I think it's good. Maybe there's people listening that can relate that are UCSB students. So hopefully we can all learn from Cheyenne and Carly's wisdom. And so you have tons of wisdom. And we're here talking about mental health and mental health stigma today because in recent news, did you know that mental health is the largest public health priority and the largest financial burden? That's of any health issue in the world, according to the World Health Organization and the World Economic Forum. And in a report from the Centers for Disease Control called Attitudes Toward Mental Illness, they found that stigma and embarrassment are two of the top reasons why people with mental health issues don't seek help. Yeah. And, I would just like to reinforce that issues surrounding mental health affect people from all walks of life. So none of us are really immune from that. So, we're all a part of that. And I just like to go over what is mental health. I mean, for me, I think mental health is when we have a physiological balance, like our brain feels kind of calm, like we're not thinking about too many things, and our heart's beating at a nice rate, and our nervous system's calm, and it kind of gives us this sense of inner peace. I was wondering, maybe we could start with Cheyenne, and then Carly, you could answer. I was curious what you think or how you would describe mental health.
I think it's the foundation of every person. If you are mentally unstable, you're not going to be able to perform well in school or work or, keep up interpersonal relationships. But if things are good and you're feeling good mentally, then your life sort of falls into place.
Right, that's true. I like that. That's a great description. What about Carly?
I totally agree. I think it's like you can't have a solid, you can't be your full self unless your mental is in check and like your mental is okay. It's totally, like you said, it's like the center of all beings. It's kind of like where you're starting from as being a person. So it's probably the most important health that you can check
By
on.
far.
I agree.
Some people will even say that your physical health depends on your mental health.
It does.
Too.
Right. I mean, I had a physician in here a couple weeks ago, and he was saying that he thinks that all of our medical conditions are like psychosymptomatic.
Oh yeah, you know, placebo effect and all that stuff comes into play there. You know, like how much stuff is in our mental and just making us sick. You know,
It's
and
true.
it's a real sick. It's not,
It's real. Well, it does. It manifests in a very
it's not
real
like you're
way
just
that
imagining,
we
yeah.
exactly. I mean, and I was just in my office this morning seeing patients, and I was talking to someone, and we were talking about plastic surgery and looking a certain way, and that exact idea of that, like, yes, how we look at on the outside is so important, but really it's like it has to come from within, first, I think, and then the outside kind of we can take care of that. So, and I just wanted to also share a little bit on statistics, because I don't know if everybody is aware of how much sexual assault happens, but the research I found that is an American is sexually assaulted every 2 minutes, totaling an average of nearly 238,000 individuals over 12 years of age each year. And that's probably really low. That's according to the U.S. Department of Justice.
That's low.
Imagine how much is uncharted too.
Exactly, because people have fear. That's why it's great for you too to come and talk, so you can inspire other people to not be afraid. And also, the Crimes Against Children Research Center estimates that 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 20 boys will be a victim of sexual abuse in their lifetimes, and that these assaults leave behind a lifetime of psychological kind of hurts, and there's some big consequences. So my hope too with the show is just to talk more about maybe possible resources that could serve to help people dealing with this really important public health concerns. And I also was looking up the number of victims in rapes and other just sexual assaults, and it said that 310,000 children were raped or sexually assaulted in California. That was according to 2012. So I'm sure it's actually much higher.
And that's
I bet it is.
children. That's just
Super.
it's huge numbers. And
Huge
it's,
numbers.
And it's like, when does the society step in and do something? And I guess
That's what we're doing
Now.
yeah, that's what we're doing.
stepping
now.
up right now.
Yeah.
This is the time. I mean,
Right.
I actually feel like this is such a crucial issue. Just it's important for men too, and not just it's not a
absolutely.
woman's
Totally.
issue, because I hear men that have stuff happen, but also
Yeah.
I think just for respecting each other and caring about each other.
Yeah.
too.
Also for, if you're going to be in a relationship with someone, you never know. That could have happened to your future girlfriend or wife, and it's really important that men and women are educated on the subject.
Yeah.
And a lot of girls can come forward a little bit easier than men can. I think there is more of a stigma around men being raped or sexually abused, truly, just from my experience.
For sure. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had a guy come forward and
I
say,
have though. I've heard that, because I think that happens more and more, like boys' locker rooms or in rooms, and then the person's even the stigma's
or
big there.
elderly people.
Elder-
It's
elder abuse.
it's out there, but it's weird. It's funny how things get kind of pushed towards certain genders sometimes, but it's definitely out there. It's like, is it just that we're not hearing it, or like you said, it's more like a locker room scenario where we just don't get much farther than there. I don't.
Well, I think there's so much stigma, like that
it
people just feel.
hurts to tell.
It's so shameful too. Yeah.
a lot of it also, obviously, I'm a survivor of it. When it happens to you, you can't really come to terms with that immediately. So, right after it happens, I was 10 when it had started for me. The last thing I was going to do was go tell anybody.
Right. Especially when you're 10, because
Yeah.
you're so.
I
It's
thought
almost
I'd
like
get in
you
trouble.
won't-
I
you
thought I
won't
would get in
believe it.
trouble, or
Yeah.
I thought, okay, maybe I had something to do with this, because why would this happen to me?
Exactly.
And,
That's
yeah,
a very common
Right.
thing that I hear, is that the person, that's like the stigma when we internalize that, because then we take on the idea that, I'm bad or I
Right.
deserve this.
right.
Kind of,
Yeah. Why'd he pick me?
Exactly. But
Like-
you're not. It's, yeah.
And it's not, it's only taken me, 12 years to figure that out, that it wasn't my fault.
Exactly.
But so many people still in their, adulthood are suffering from the trauma they faced when they were kids when this happened to them, and a lot of people don't know where to go after it happens because A, you're in denial that it happened to you. B, there's so much fear with coming forward, and C, it's oftentimes happened by somebody you know, or someone your parents knew, or your siblings, or
family friend.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's like hard to even bear, I'm sure. And so,
Carly, do you ever hear people talking about, I mean, I know we're talking about music too, because you're a musician, but do you ever hear people talking about like being sexually abused or assaulted?
all
or
the time. Music it's kind of like a therapy for a lot of people. And you hear stories. There's some songs that are just hard to listen to from some songwriters because you almost go there with them whenever it's like a diary page or something.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people deal with all kinds of stuff through music, and that subject is definitely a big one that's out there. I think people sing about it a lot more than people realize too, and it's not easy to decipher maybe.
Well, and also I just think we don't talk about it in general. Like, I mean, just having a 13-year-old, I changed a lot of diapers, and it's it's a very intimate relationship.
Right.
He's trusting me and he doesn't have a choice in a way. And so I think even the way we treat our babies, and and we teach our kids too about our bodies. But then, of course, what you're saying too is that you were kind of put Cheyenne in this predicament where, like, you're 10, and so
That's way too. It's so sad, and of course we're really. That I'm sure you hear it so much. Like, we're really sorry that happened, but it's like this person that you've become. Like 10 years old is no easy time for anything.
Right. Oh yeah, being in middle school and having that happen too. Well, your friends
Then
are saying, "Oh, I had my
happens.
first kiss." Yeah, I had my first kiss, or and I'm like inside in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, like the things that, and at that point, when I was 13, I was thinking I had to do anything that I could to just keep myself from thinking that I was like a victim. So I tried, it's almost, my best friend told me that she thought I had like Stockholm syndrome for a while because I was like so adamant that like no, like this isn't happening to me, I'm not being abused, like that I have to have some sort of role in it, I have and they didn't know, no one knew until I was 17, no one. And so even when I was 17 I was still dealing with that, like, well, what if he just got the wrong idea, blah blah blah. Now at 22 I'm like, I was freaking 10, there's no way.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but
any grown adult knows what the right and wrong idea.
Right. And so there are two things you can do. One, I mean, I could let it consume me. I could let it affect my life every single day. Or I could turn it into something positive where I feel good going to bed every night and knowing that somebody else who is going through it, if I could help in any way to make their process easier, then I'm so happy to do that in any way that I can.
So you that's what I try to do too. When I know people say, well, how did you overcome, I know I've been sexually assaulted myself. And I know when I tell my patients that, they're like, well, how did you overcome that? Do you still think about that? Does that still bother you? And I'm like, no, it doesn't, because I've turned that into an opportunity to help other people. So I think what you're saying is, one, that it took you a long time to actually share that. And maybe would it have helped, do you think, to have shared it sooner? But it sounds like your family kind of wouldn't have believed you, or...
Oh, no. So what actually happened, so before this, I have my podcast, Savage Survivors. It should be coming out hopefully this summer now. But I tell my story in detail there. So if you want to check it out, you can. But I'll just briefly touch on it. I was 10. My older sister, Savannah, she's 3 years older than me. She was 13. We had met a family years prior to this who had 2 boys, one my age and then one Savannah's age. And the older boy started abusing me for years and years. And because we were in such close contact with that family for so long, I didn't tell anyone. And then once I turned 17, I finally, I had major behavioral issues when I was 14, 15, 16.
Manifested that way, yeah.
Absolutely. I was mad at everyone except for him because, I was mad at myself. I was mad at my parents. I felt like, and this was not my parents' fault. Like, they had no idea.
Well, maybe you were mad because you felt like they could have did you feel like they didn't protect you even though they didn't know?
Well, I just felt like, why am I being put in this situation around this person? It's so confusing.
Yeah,
You're just mad. You're just mad at everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I turned 17, my parents finally were like, okay, we're just going to send you to a psychiatrist and, hopefully you can get it all worked out. And so I told her. But before I told her, I had asked, what are the confidentiality laws here? And she was sort of like, if you're harming yourself or others, and eating disorders can get a little tricky, but she basically listed them off. So I felt comfortable enough, because we were still fully in contact with this family, I felt comfortable enough to tell her. And then, my parents had no idea. My sister had no idea. I think I had told one friend at the time. The following month, I went for my follow-up appointment, and I sat in her office, and she said, hi, Shy, good to see you. How are things going? I'm like, yeah, things are great. And I finally felt like, this weight lifted off my chest. Like, here's an adult I can talk to about, here's some guidance. And then she said, I called and checked with social services. And unfortunately, because you were under the age of 12 when this happened to you, I have a legal obligation to tell your mom and dad. And I just remember I burst into tears, and I was so afraid. And I was like, I'm sorry, but there's no way. Like, there's absolutely no possible way you're going to tell my parents. No. And she said, well, they're in the waiting room. Mm-hmm. And she said, like, do you have any questions before I tell them? Because I'm going to bring them in here. And I just remember being like, is the window unlocked behind me? Because I'm going to jump out of it. Like, that's what I had said.
That's a good thing. Maybe that's a good thing.
It was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Those are hard situations, yeah.
Right. It was the best thing. Because if I told myself when I was a teenager, I will take this to the grave. I will make sure that my parents die, not knowing this happened to me. Because I knew it would just ruin them. Thankfully, if you are listening to this and this has happened to you, tell a doctor, tell somebody, because if I didn't do that, I don't know if I would still be alive today.
And in some ways, those are really hard calls, I know, when someone discloses something to me, and then I unfortunately do sometimes have to make a report, but it's like, it's just a mandate, it's
right.
Like, but at the same time, the reason that's in place is for your protection.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, I have a woman who got raped 23 years ago, and I'm still thinking, I want to find that guy, because I said to her, she's like, oh, you don't need to report, it's already been reported, and I said, well, that guy might be out doing that to other women.
He might be doing more than that.
Exactly.
Now,
and so, it's like a collective team effort. So you sharing, and then the psychiatrist telling your folks.
The sharing, I think, is what really puts an end to, sex is human nature. Sex, it can be good. But, sex with violence. The violence is where, the assaulting and the not understanding the no's and what's right and what's wrong, that's where everything changes. And I feel like the only defense against that is sharing and talking.
Also, I do think, when I have young adults I talk to, I think what you're saying is such a valid point. Were you saying something? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I feel like, I just coming from an outsider's point of view, but it's like, that just seems like the remedy is.
It is. It's
hard,
true.
Man. But.
Also, I think the other piece that you brought up that's very relevant is, if someone is kind of like, oh, they keep pushing, and you don't, and you initially didn't want to, really try to stick to that, because you have to remember you're compromising your well-being maybe for someone else, even if it seems like, oh, that's what I should do. So you have to get really clear before you get together or around someone.
Keep your boundaries.
Yes,
exactly.
Boundaries are your bestie.
Before you even get into a situation with someone, if you're a teenager, if you're 20, it really doesn't matter how old you are. If you are thinking of dating someone or hanging out with someone, whatever, make sure that you've established your boundaries yourself before you're even in contact with that person. Physical contact in the same room. So you don't have to come out of that situation saying, why did I just let that happen? Or I don't feel comfortable with what just
And it
happened.
could be life-changing, like you're
life
saying, you know
changing.
what I mean? Just those couple choices and moments, you know what I mean? Of course, you were 10.
Right.
So
there's a difference. There's a
Yeah.
difference. But I've also been in a situation with the person who abused me where I had to either be raped or give consent. And so I just I was 15 and I essentially was just like, I don't want to be raped. I don't want to be raped. And I don't, regret that decision necessarily, because something worse could have happened. Something better could have happened as well.
It's
but
hard to know, yeah.
it's hard to know. At least I learned my boundaries. So now I don't have to worry about getting into a situation. I mean, I've been in a relationship for a long time, but getting into a situation where I would have to, feel uncomfortable or feel like I was taking
make a
advantage
determination
of
of what you should do. Yeah.
Right.
So it's better if you can figure out what your sexual comfortability is. And also it's good to just check out situations, because sometimes people will say, you want to lay down on my bed, or, and then they might take advantage of you. So you have to really think, okay.
Communicate.
Yeah.
Well, and trust yourself too.
Yeah, and it's okay to say no.
I was wondering, how do you both think, like, your mental, I mean, I know we've been talking about how it kind of impacts your mental health, but I was wondering how you both think mental health and, like, sexual abuse, sexual assault intersect. Like, if you're sexually, like you were talking about the impact.
I personally have not seen, I know so many people this has happened to. I've not seen one scenario where it has not, a sexual assault or abuse has not impacted someone's mental health. I've not seen one scenario where someone was completely fine after and it really had no effect on depression or
intersection.
Right. I just, it's
like
hard when you're in the moment too. So say like when I was 16, 17, 18, couldn't get out of bed, couldn't go to school, and I'm like having anxiety just thinking of going to class. It's really hard to correlate that with something that was happening, from ages 10 to 13 and this, right. And it is hard to do that, but you also need to, have some love for yourself and think, I've been through, mega amounts of trauma. This can happen, my mental health might not be as, in the best condition or in the state as great as the person next to me. However, they haven't been through the same things I have, and it does correlate. It sucks. It's horrible that it does, because you didn't do anything. Someone brought this upon you.
That's why we have to stop this, because, I mean, I just think this is like, it's really...
Come on, people. Like, stop raping people, Just stop.
Well, and also, I think there's just some people who are very predatory, but we do live in a world where, people are sexualized, too. So it's kind of like we have to make sure that we're clear that we can be sexual. We can,
but yeah, I think it should be more
able to express ourselves. Yeah,
right. But I think we should make things like, okay, maybe there's some signs here that your kid may be a predator if he's like acting out violently, like in certain ways. Maybe if you see these things or sense these things, or you relay it to your children, now it's okay. When they're going through that puberty stage, it's okay to feel certain things, but it is not okay to hurt anybody else.
Keep the discussion going, right?
Yeah, just keep starting the discussion there, not ignoring the fact that some of these kids are having these feelings. I think it's just as important as identifying the kids that have been victimized as identifying, the troublemakers. Yeah, and I don't think it's a wrong thing. I think that's mental health too.
I think it's vital. I think that's so important that even before puberty, it's the first thing you learn in preschool is keep your hands to yourself.
Totally. Well, I mean, I was just thinking of a case I had. It was a boy who was in 6th grade, and what he was doing was he was kind of brushing girls, and he got in big trouble actually, and then he was trying to get into it.
But he probably doesn't understand why he wants to do this either,
Right, so it's like I was seeing him to try to help him understand that, but he probably had been taught, that was okay to do
or
that.
Maybe it had happened to him, and
they
don't know.
Exactly, well, he did. His mom was doing that to him a little bit. And then the other thing is that, well, that's what happens is that people have inappropriate behaviors, and I mean...
I think my abuser was molested by his mother. Exactly. That's my personal, that's what I think.
And also it's common, like, a family member puts you on their lap and, next thing, I mean, it does happen.
Or say that, 6th grade boy has an older brother in high school who brings girls over all the time and they have parties and he watches the way they interact and he thinks it's okay. It's just...
It's your environment.
It's confusing for kids.
It is.
Well, I think it's just important to talk about sexuality. I mean, my dad is taught
Hugely
sexual... taught sexually STDs at Cal Poly in San Luis, and then he went to schools and taught like human
probably
sexuality.
why you're so confident and educated and such an awesome woman.
One thing, thank you, you're so sweet. But one thing that I really appreciate about that is that he made me very comfortable with sexuality, like just being able to express myself and talk about it. But I think people don't like
people don't talk about it.
Especially when women talk about it, I feel like that's whenever it's like, oh, she's so brash and she's so bold and she'll say all this, and it's like, no, like my titty hurts or something. Sorry.
Well, we're being sexualized. We're being sexualized anyway.
No, yeah,
but it's never okay when we sexualize ourselves.
But to talk about it kind of numbs out certain things, and then it's easier to get to the subjects that were blocked by this first and foremost shock about you even saying anything, and so it's good to get through that part so we can get to the nitty gritty.
Totally, we've got to get to the nitty gritty. I know I am a little bit brash, but I mean, I feel very passionate. I'm Greek, so it's kind of passion.
I'm Greek.
I know.
Greek.
I know. Well, I have a lot of passion for this. Like,
I have too much passion for this.
I know. I want to be Greek.
Okay, well, you could be a surrogate Greek.
Yeah.
We'll include you in the surrogate Greek.
Yeah.
I was wondering too, like, how do you think sexual abuse or sexual assault, the people who are like that you've been around, do you think that they accept or reject like mental health stigma? Do you think they talk about like, oh, people aren't talking about this? Or
people who have been through it?
Yeah.
It depends. I have seen some people who, like my friend Ella, my partner for the podcast, when she was raped when we were in ninth grade, and she kept it a secret for only a few weeks, and then she was like, you know what, this is wrong, and she started like a nonprofit, and she started this huge organization at our high school, and she was like, I'm not going to be silenced about it. This is how it affects me and my mental health, and here and there. And then I've seen people who it's happened to, and they refuse to discuss it. But I know, you haven't been to school in X amount of days, or you haven't shown up to any of your, like if you say you're going to be
somewhere. You're saying it manifests in other ways. Like I know, like you're talking about like maybe what you were saying when you were 14, because you were acting.
I was acting out. I started drinking a lot and smoking pot.
You probably wouldn't have admitted then, right?
That no, absolutely
but
not.
Just, I mean, she's talking about like the signs in a way of how she was trying to cope. I think that's what you're saying.
My coping mechanism's very unhealthy. But you also don't know what to do, because I didn't know how to tell my mom and dad I have depression, major depression. I can't get out of bed today.
And you didn't even want them to know.
I didn't even care at that point. I was just like, I don't want to go to school. And then it would start, I felt like, oh, my parents, they just dismiss me. They don't understand what's going on. How come they're not more curious as to why I've been behaving the way I have been? But as a parent, and now that I've gotten older, I look at it, there were a lot of signs that were just typical teenage behavior. It's hard to decipher the two of like, okay, there's an actual issue going on versus,
teenage.
14, 15, and then she'll come out of it. My sister, she came out of it very quickly. She had like her little short period of teenage hormones or whatever it was.
Maybe that extended yours too. Maybe, I don't know.
Potentially.
Trying to figure that out.
Right. And I just think that if people, once my parents knew what had happened and they knew what was going on, and I was diagnosed with PTSD. It's called a complex PTSD. So now, when
PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's like when you've had repeated, severe trauma, just so you all know.
So I feel totally comfortable, and my parents feel totally comfortable if I go to their house or, go meet at my dad's office for lunch. How are your meds? I take Prozac. I take 10 milligrams of Prozac a day.
Yeah.
How are your meds? How's your depression? Have you been able to get out of bed? I so would rather have it be out in the open than some awkward thing we have to the elephant in the room, we have to pretend that it doesn't exist.
This one person, he's a young adult, he said that we should be more transparent, and he was using the word parent in there. Transparent. I like that. Right? Is that good? Like transparent? What about Carly? What do you think about that? Do you think that people talk about if you do hear, I guess you're saying you do hear people talking about sexual abuse or assaults or things like that, do they Do you think that they're accepting of it, or are they kind of rejecting of it?
I think that it depends. Like when I see it go down, it's usually after they've dealt with enough that they're confident enough to sing about it on a stage, and it seems almost at that point that they've become far along in like their process of maybe just kind of accepting and not being a victim anymore, and rather just kind of singing. I mean, you hear people sing and like to write music about all kinds of stuff, but it's always the strongest that have been through so much, and they can sing confidently and very proudly about the things they go to, and only the people that
Just like you.
yeah, and but I mean, you know, only the few that don't understand because they're closed-minded will shy away. The rest are very face-fronting and excited to hear what they have to say.
I wonder.
That's how we learn from each other, you know.
Exactly. How do you think people could be more transparent about that?
I think it's probably the hardest thing to do, but just kind of facing your fear and dealing with, you know, it's like whenever I don't know, you know, it's terrifying because I think everybody in a way has had to deal with a bit of sexual abuse, like in their own way. Maybe it's not to the full extent of like, you know, maybe it's more mental, or
not
maybe
like Cheyenne's exact experience.
Yeah,
but
like,
I think there's a gradient.
everyone's demon is different and stuff, but I think that the number one process of getting over anything, no matter what it is, how deep it is just first looking at it straight in the face and slapping it right in the face. And
that's what I tell people too. Kind of welcome the thing that you're most afraid of. But I think we're taught not to. But it is true. You kind
it's
of
like
take it
when
on.
I got in a car accident one time and I couldn't get over it. Like I was so young when it first happened, and I was like really scared, and my mom signed me out for a counselor and stuff because she was like worried about how I was so scared. And it's the advice that I got was kind of relative to a lot of these things, and it's like when something really bad and traumatic happens to you, almost like a big accident or a terrible memory that you just can't flush out of your head, you have to think of the moments, like she related it to like how I kept thinking of the impact of the car rather than following through. Yes, impact happened, boom, but then what happened right after that? I took a deep breath, I stepped out of the car, and I walked away, and then I called my mom. You know, like, you have to think about how you were able to walk away and how you
kind of like thinking of the positives.
Yeah,
I guess,
that's the song part of it. You know, it's that's the happy ending.
Yeah, if you're just jumping in now, listening to, we have we're listening to Cheyenne Thies and Carly Joe. I just was thinking people probably don't maybe realize.
Right over here. I'm sorry.
No, I was thinking that people probably they might like your music too, because you know Carly. I went and listened to her the other night, and she's got an amazing voice. So look for Carly Joe. She's an up and coming singer, but also, I mean, I think she has some good wisdom there. So just wanted to let you know we're talking about sexual abuse and sexual assault and mental health, but we have Cheyenne, and she's here kind of talking about her podcast that's coming up called Savage Survivor. So look out for that in the summer. And then also her partner has a movie that's called
Audrey and Daisy.
Audrey and Daisy on Netflix, if you're interested in that documentary. So
watch that tonight.
There's some good, it's
trigger warning for that documentary, though. I will definitely say
I'm
trigger
warning.
I'm
going to want to punch somebody.
It's emotional. Oh, you will.
I did. I watched that. Yeah, that is. I watched most of it. I looked for
Ella. Okay.
No, it's good. You can handle it. You can totally handle
it.
No, it's good. You should watch it because
it's what we're talking about.
Well, it's real.
It's
real.
It's real.
And if you're gonna avoid it, if you know something where you think you'd be triggered by watching something like that, I would just like to say this is going on every single day. Would you say every 2 minutes?
It's every 2. Well, I think it's even more.
I think it's more than that as well.
And actually, I like Carly's approach to the movie. I mean, don't shy away from the things you're afraid of, because you know actually that just makes you more fearful, and then you kind of get frozen and you like back into a corner and shrink.
No. Yeah.
You want to be you want to empower yourself because you want to love yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and get if you know, maybe it is hard to watch the movie, but
that physical
maybe
change,
just be prepared. Just be prepared for it, and know that it's going to. You know, there are things that are going to pull at your heartstrings.
If it makes you upset, you got to do something about it.
Well, exactly. If it makes you so upset, and you know, if any of this conversation makes you so upset, it's for good reason. It's very upsetting. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
I feel like personally we're entering a new era, because I think we're at the end of this being allowed,
Oh,
you know, and
yeah.
accepted because
In the workplace, and I mean,
putting your feet
absolutely.
down.
when I look back, even, I mean, I'm much older than you both, but when I look back, like I remember working at a hospital, and there was a guy that he used to always tell me to come sit on his lap, and I was only like
hell no.
18. But you know, I mean, that was a long time ago. And in those days, nobody even said anything. You know, looking back,
Yeah.
I didn't even think twice about it.
Right.
But now I do. I'm like, oh my gosh, that
Right.
was really inappropriate.
Would not fly today.
Right, but also I was thinking, you know, it's like what's horrible about it is like when you're young, you know, you're innocent, you're just kind of out and in the world, and you know, you're not
Yeah.
really wanting to have to like protect yourself all the time, so you want to be free spirited, and then
Yeah.
something like that happens. So you just have to be
Well,
more prepared.
I would like to say, for those of you out there who are free spirited and then this happened to you, please don't let it stop you from still being yourself.
Totally, yeah. Be yourself even more. Let
Yeah.
yourself
Even more
shine.
so, and say, well, look what happened to me, and look what, okay, this just shows how powerful I am and how I came back from this, and I'm going to just make my life that much better, and I'm going to learn from this, and I'm going to turn it into something positive. Otherwise, and I promise you this because I know from experience, it will consume you. If you don't do anything with it, and it doesn't
Yeah.
mean you have to share it with the world. I'm being vulnerable by, you know, talking
Thank
about
you,
it
too.
openly. No, but I'm not afraid. But
Both of you, yeah.
but 2 years ago, I would have been afraid to do this. It
Right.
doesn't mean you have to publicly share it, but
Yeah, just right now you're doing
find your own way
Yeah.
and do something, whether that's
Find your
taking
own
a
way.
walk every day, you know, exercising, eating healthy, or watching something, or watching
or being
documentaries.
like, I mean, I love that Carly's here with you as well,
Pick up a
because it's
guitar.
great you two could support. What'd you say?
Pick up a guitar.
Yeah, and to support each other too. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because you can relate,
Oh,
even
yeah.
though your experience isn't even the same exactly. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
that was a
Bond-
high five
You can
from us.
actually really.
I know.
They're giving each other high five. You can really bond from this. You know what I mean? And
Oh,
it
yeah.
can empower you both together. And
Oh,
then
totally.
It brings fuel
I
to
have
that.
a question for you, Carly. How many people do you know who this has happened to?
I don't, like we've been kind of saying, I'm sure there's a lot of things that go unsaid, but I've definitely had quite a few friends. And whenever, and it's funny because whenever you grow up past a certain age and then you look back, you kind of notice a lot of things that maybe weren't even picked up.
Yep. Red
as-
flag, red flag.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
like, oh God, there was a time with me, and I've never really like discussed it too much, but I always wondered like where I went to a party, and like, you know, things happen at parties and stuff, but like there's like I said, it happens to everybody in like a certain way where like you're not sure like what happened at that moment or something, you know, and then you come back the next day and you don't even want to think about it, so then you just shove it to the side. Couple years later, you wonder like where's this pent up emotion
Yes.
coming from and stuff, and like you go back and like I don't know, it's just too many friends, too many close friends, and too many close calls, like where you almost wonder how many of my friends really have
Yes.
been through this that haven't said anything, you know,
I'm
'cause
guessing
even
most
I've
people-
had to go
most.
back and think about like certain things, you know, like it's and it's something like we've been talking about. It shouldn't be as shrouded as it has been, especially in not so much the recent past, but I feel like, I don't know, my mom was like an engineer and works in a man's field, they would say, and she's always had to tell me about how she's had to deal with guys just kind of like, if she ever gets a promotion or something, it's never like, oh, congratulations, you did something great and you worked your butt off to get this. It's always like, oh, she must be sleeping
How
with
did
this
she
guy.
get that right?
You know, it's
Well, even
you
as a
know,
doctor myself, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
people are like, how could
As
you
a
be a
musician,
doctor? You're
right?
like
It's-
attractive,
Oh, you're
too.
blonde and pretty. Yeah.
It's
right?
like you
You're
can't.
smart. How could you say
It's all about one thing for some people, and I think
Yeah.
that's
their
But that's
problem.
also about
Yeah.
keeping people down. You know what I mean? And I think that by talking about
Yeah,
it, we
and-
can make it more
exactly. Now,
real.
my mom has never had to deal, like she's never said any, like, you know, but I do take that as somebody who has been affected by some sort
Yeah.
of like gender,
Well, I mean, if you think
sexual.
about how it would have been if she had been more supported, like you're saying, like
Yeah.
if she had been told, "Wow, you're such an amazing
yeah,
engineer," like
then it would have
shouldn't
been
be.
way different. Oh yeah, she's
Right.
definitely had to toughen up because of a lot of that
And
stuff.
I've heard that that's very common.
That's
I
just
actually
a
have a woman
small
friend that's an
scale.
engineer, and her husband's an engineer, and they
Oh,
both work at
really?
the same firm. And her husband does the actual engineering, and she started out as an engineer, super smart, went to some good school, I can't remember which one. Well, over the years, they've kind of put her down. Now she's like an administrator. This
Now,
lady is
how
like
is that?
brilliant. And she always is saying to me, you know, and then like, you know, people complain about what snacks she brings to parties.
my
and stuff.
gosh.
No.
But they would never do that to another person. So
Nope.
that is someone that
that's
they
small
respect and
scale,
care
of
for.
course, but it's like it goes on all ends.
It ripples around. Do you?
Ripples around.
It ripples around. Well, and I just think that our quality of like daily life gets affected, too.
Totally,
and
but
how do we recover from these?
People are putting a stand up, though, like what you said. I think things are definitely changing. We're on the freaking radio talking about it.
Well, I feel like this is kind of the last hurrah. I feel like that's why part of the reasons the world's in a really turbulent time. Because I have this minor in global peace and security I got from here.
Oh, wow, that's a
and so,
great minor.
Gandhi, it is a great... People used to say to me, what is that? And I was
Right.
like, I hope we have that.
Yeah.
But, I did my thesis on Gandhi and, like, the search for truth. And I actually did it on solving child abuse nonviolently in our community. But what Gandhi always said is that out of turbulence comes peace. So I feel like we're in this really turbulent time because we're talking about disagreeable topics and challenging
all
things.
across the world, yeah.
Totally, but it's such a great opportunity. Like, we're talking about individually and collectively.
That's how we work on the kinks.
Exactly. Well, I mean, maybe the world's heading into a different, more enlightened place.
Please.
Well, the Dalai Lama
I
says we're
hope
living
so.
in like one of the most enlightened times. So I think we are
I
heading
believe
that
that.
way.
I
It's
believe-
just word of-
I do as well. I mean, 5 years ago, I was like suffering from just crippling anxiety from like, oh my gosh, I don't want these people to find out. I don't want these people to know what happened to me. And now here I am just fully talking about it. And I seriously do not have a single fear. If someone doesn't believe me, that's their problem, not mine. I don't care. Why would I lie about, it's not glamorous to talk
you are
about.
comfortable, so it's your own.
It's
for
my
your
own
self.
Exactly.
And hopefully, maybe there's hopefully somebody listening too.
That's the
who
thing.
has-
There's
can relate.
people, there's people that are just listening to like, oh my God,
That can
she
relate.
is my savior.
Well, no, they're probably just like, oh my gosh, that happened to me, or my best friend, or my sister, or my mom,
hear
because
somebody, yeah.
everyone, I promise, every single one of you listening knows someone this
somebody.
has happened to.
Well, and I think too, what you were talking about, like initially, like kind of the shock. I mean, I think everybody's a little bit different. Do you have any recommendations for somebody, when they're initially just even
Yes.
grappling with that?
That's a good
you
I
know?
do. One thing I definitely want to make note of is that most of the time it's not violent. You're groomed first.
That's
I
true.
was
That's what I was
groomed.
talking about with, like, this other person too, where if someone keeps saying they kind of coerce you, where they say, "Oh, come on, don't,
Right.
it's not a big deal," or
Or
you
it's
know,
You
Or
feel
it's
bad
unspoken.
for saying
Exactly,
no.
yeah.
No.
Yeah, or it's unspoken, or it just starts and
Influence, yeah.
you don't realize until, just to share my personal experience, I was forced to watch porn when I was 9. And looking back now, I'm like, okay, that's when it started. And then all of the sudden it turned into something horrible and a really big deal. So
just a couple little choices.
yeah,
it's
just
hard.
those tiny little things that really change the trajectory of your life. And so for those of you listening who either it's just begun for you or, you're still dealing with that shock, it took me a long time. It's okay if it takes you a long time to
Totally.
accept it. It is
Yeah.
so
It may take
okay.
your whole life.
It
I mean,
really
and
might.
everybody, it's a lifelong journey.
Or yeah,
Find
or for
healing
some
sometimes.
people you might just find a way to, lessen it.
Yeah.
It might not ever go away, but that's okay as long as you can accept that, this wasn't my fault. I think that's the
main
biggest
concept.
thing. Right.
You have to get across
Right.
to yourself.
So I would say if you're in shock from something like this happening to you, think about how many people it happens to and know that you are the furthest thing from alone. You're the furthest thing from alone because you could, I guarantee you, and this has happened to me so many times, you could be in a bar and strike up a conversation with a girl, and I promise you, if that topic somehow was brought up, she would either be like, that happened to my sister or my best friend or me, or you're not alone. You're so not alone. And part of me is like, I wish you were, because I wish it didn't have to happen to so
Right.
many people.
Well,
But
maybe that'll change, though, too.
hopefully.
But I think it's interesting, even when I was out listening to Carly the other night, I was talking to a guy, and I brought up that I was going to have you on the show. Yeah. And he was an older guy, and it was just kind of interesting, like when I said sexual assault and sexual abuse.
What did he do?
Did he cringe?
He didn't cringe, but he definitely, it got silent for a minute there, and I thought, I just was nonchalantly telling him because I was excited to have you on the show, and it was just interesting. It wasn't like he
like people get offended.
Well, he's just
a little
thinking.
bit.
They have to think about it.
Well, it made him uncomfortable. But I think it's okay to make ourselves a little uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
It's necessary.
It's necessary, exactly.
That's a huge forward motion, is being able to recognize that it's not okay.
Right. I mean, my thing is, if you're uncomfortable just based on on my show, I'm having someone talk about sexual assault, and that makes you uncomfortable.
Imagine the people dealing
exactly.
with it.
So imagine how uncomfortable it is as a whole,
and I'm trained in that
aspect.
No, it's true. Well, and just as a person, as a woman, I think that it's good to kind of step back for a minute and just check out what's going on, and also determine how you want to be treated and talked to, and those things, like you're talking about boundaries. Carly, how do you think, I know you said it has, you haven't necessarily seen it, witnessed things one-on-one, but do you think the music industry could do something, to like a campaign or some kind of organization to work specifically toward reducing like this?
Oh, there's
mental health.
I'm pretty sure there's probably quite a few of them. Music tends to pair up with almost anything. It kind of goes with everything that we deal with. And I know that there's lots of organizations that, I believe there's one, Laura's Kids or something, and it deals with children.
Is that a music one though, or no?
No, that one's not music, but I know that they
field,
hold concerts and stuff that are benefiting.
I mean, also the terminology. I mean, certain
Oh, you
songs.
mean like just actually singing about it?
Well, exactly. I was thinking do you know how, do you remember that song, We Are the World? There was like a group of musicians that got together for people who were starving.
Oh, yeah.
I guess I was kind of thinking, either collectively as a group of musicians or, maybe collectively what the music industry says.
I think that would be a huge good thing. I mean, because there's so many subjects going on in the world, but this one, like we've kind of discussed, has affected so many people that it's almost exhausting not shining more of a light on it. So I would definitely be for something like that, like a big, whether it's a song. We have those ones like, what's his name? Macklemore made this song. I love his song about like the anti-gay.
Yes.
What's his name?
Macklemore.
Okay.
But he made this wonderful song, Same Love.
Yes.
And it's about
great song.
It's about not hating anybody that's of different gender specification. That girls like girls, guys like guys. Yeah. I think that we could go a step further and kind of talk about people that have had their boundaries taken or something like that.
Well, music is a huge. It reaches so many people.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to think of ways we
have
can
you ever
reach
thought
people.
about picking up a guitar?
Oh, I can't play.
You two could
anything.
make a song
I know,
together.
like that. I'm thinking about
I
a song right now.
have absolutely no talent in that field.
Carly, did you want to play a little? No, she's
I
our guitarist a little.
Why don't you just acapella?
We're missing a string.
So maybe you two will actually make a song or something.
Yeah, maybe we'll come back and
my
and
dad
sing
plays
you a song.
the drums.
I just know, I love
just
listening.
you and the drums.
Yeah.
You play the drums.
My dad plays the
that's
drums.
right, your
He
dad
could give me a lesson.
It's a family
just like
band.
first grade all over again.
Yay!
You guys could have your own little.
Oh,
band.
yeah, we
Well, I
could
mean,
start
if
a
you had a
band.
mission, like maybe one song that was devoted to.
Yeah, and it's funny
awareness.
because
I was thinking,
you almost you kind of fight for the words, but maybe that's the challenge. Is like, how can we talk about this in a song?
I have an artist.
Well, that people can relate to.
I'm going to call out right now who could do it, and her name is Chelsea Cutler, and she is my favorite singer. And Chelsea Cutler, if you somehow find this, I don't think anyone could write a song about this as well as you could.
Go.
Is Chelsea Cutler someone that is famous, or is that
I went to her concert last month. I DM her all the time, and she always gets back to me.
Aww,
so maybe I will DM her. I have a huge girl crush on her.
I'll have to look her up. I know some bands because I do see students here. They tell me there's I think Stone Temple. No, 21
Pilots.
21 Pilots.
Yay.
Sorry, I'm bad with the
They're
band
my
names.
band.
No,
But I think they talk about mental health and stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's totally what they write about and stuff, but they write about it in a way that is like
relatable and fun,
it's
stressed
friendly.
out. They have a song literally called Stressed
talking
Out.
about
I just think that helps people because if they hear something they can relate to.
Yeah.
Plus, I guess people also get the wrong idea. Like if you listen to hip hop, because sometimes they use the word, the B word.
Yeah, well, they'll mask.
Worse than that.
I mean, I think that the message is, like, I love listening to hip-hop. I didn't mean to cut you off, Carly. What were you going to say?
No, I love listening to hip-hop, too, but I think I agree. Like, sometimes it's more masked and, like, drowning the emotions with, like, you know, alcohol and drugs and partying and, spending money.
Well, and I think the beat sounds good sometimes, but then I was like,
girl,
at the
I
gym
will
listening.
shake it all night if it's playing hip-hop. But, yeah, sometimes our music, we don't realize how much it's getting in our head, probably.
Right, well, it was interesting because I was listening to, I love Snoop Dogg, and I actually did a CD cover for Dr. Dre and a friend of mine, and I listen to their songs, and I do like them, but then sometimes I hear the words and I'm like, but I would never let them talk when I'm in a group with those kind of people, I never let anybody talk like that. I don't let them talk like that in front of me because if they want to do that in private, but
and I do understand in rap music, it's sort of just part of it.
Yeah.
They could be better. They
just
could be better. Just with women.
Just a little bit, because I think that
the drugs and money, okay, fine. But
I also think it could send a wrong message. That's all. People
absolutely.
To
someone who is, that 6th grade boy brushing up on girls.
Totally.
When they're 13 and they listen to this,
okay,
well, Dr. Dre.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They do, well, and they take that very literally. That's all I was thinking.
Yeah.
But I was talking to Cheyenne and Carly beforehand for the show, and we were talking about these bills that are cracking down on sexual assault. And in Montana, there's been some good legislature that's reached the governor's desk. There's a senator and a representative, and they actually have teamed up to create these Senate Bill 52, which streamlines the testing of sexual assault kits, and Senate Bill 261, which revises consent laws to protect against abuses of power. And then those two legislations are building off policies that were passed in 2017, which removed the word force from rape laws and increased penalties for aggravated assault. So, because they're going off of sexual assault test things, and then there's another bill, SB 261, which negates the defense of consent if there's a clear imbalance of power between two people who engage in a sexual activity. The bill uses the example of a witness of a crime and an investigating officer's a case in which consent could not be used as a viable defense. Another was a parent employee of the Department of Public Health. But anyhow, it's aimed to prevent a person from abusing his or her power to coerce another person to consent to sex. So I think it's a step in the right direction.
Absolutely.
And it passed 96-2 in the House. So that's a big, and 98-0 is the other one.
Right.
So there's some encouraging development of, these resources and people standing up to create laws. Do you have any interest in doing any kind of legislation?
I don't. So I'm still in school. I'm a psych major. I wanted to for a while. I have a teacher. His name's Dr. Flores, and he is my favorite teacher I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And he tells me all the time, he teaches, but also he's in forensic psychology. He evaluates sex offenders all day long and, child abusers. And I had an interest in going into that field, and then I kind of pulled back because I thought, enough of my life was spent, focused on this issue. I don't want to put myself in a situation where I am going to take it home with me.
Well, but maybe you wouldn't do forensic. Like when I did my PhD, they put these signs up of different things, like murder, pedophile, and they have you stand under the one that you really can't stand. Like I couldn't work with a pedophile.
No.
Because I have such a thing for protection for kids.
Exactly.
So I want to get clear. So you could still be in psychology, but you just wouldn't.
And I will be. That you can use anywhere.
I just decided to sort of put it into a different outlet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is my podcast.
Right.
Yeah. That I just thought that's what's best for me and my mental health would be. I don't think I would remain stable. Listening to pedophiles talk, because I have been through it, and I don't think I should put myself through that again.
Yeah, and also it's kind of sometimes can be dangerous. Like I know I've already to work at the Atascadero State Hospital, which is where a lot of sexual predators work, and I just wouldn't do it because I've had friends that have had bad experiences and stuff. But I mean, at the same time, those people need help. So I guess if that's something that someone else has an interest in, I'm always trying to imagine a world where each person has, the opportunity toward just self-peace and through the ability to overcome mental health barriers and obstacles to reach treatment. And I think some common barriers that people do have are like access to services because they like don't have health insurance or treatment providers or programs. So I feel like one of the reasons I was asking you to some of those questions is I feel like we need more programs to be developed to identify and manage.
Absolutely.
And then, increased awareness and communication, which we're able to do. Kind of are the key ways to move toward this acceptance and help. Yeah. I was wondering, we just have a couple more minutes. I was going to ask you maybe one or two more questions. I was wondering, how do you think like sexual abuse and sexual assault intersect within, it could be our community or your community or, whatever community we were living in. Why is it important for us to talk about our mental health and this intersection between sexual assault?
It's so prevalent.
Right. It's happening so often.
It's happening so often. There's no more time to waste by not talking about it. There's no more time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your mental is already a closed space, so the only way to kind of really escape that is talking about it with it. Unless, like you mentioned before, some people it's a little hard to talk about, but
totally understandable too.
Right, eventually getting
personal,
getting it out there. It's important to talk about so that we're not alone.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So just like creating more of conversations, talking more about it.
So that like people don't cringe when you bring it up.
Totally.
Right.
On this note, I'd like to say, just because in terms of getting in contact, if anyone listening would like to talk to me, you can contact me. I think Instagram's the easiest. I'm not an Instagram person.
You can find me on Instagram. You could also write on my Dr. Deborah page if you want to get her contact information. Cause, so what you're saying, Cheyenne, is that you're open if people have questions.
Absolutely. If they want to share their own experience, if they have questions about mine, or if they have a friend and they don't know how to help a friend who has been through this, whatever it is. And I'm not a licensed professional.
But she's talking just like peer-to-peer, which is great. We have peer-to-peer counselors at UCSB too.
So my name is spelled CheyennenThies, and you can look me up and you can DM me, send me whatever you need to or want to. So
that's a nice offer. Well, I just feel like preventing violence is just so important. In a multitude of ways, not just sexually, but we need to stop sexual violence perpetration. We need to reduce the number of victims of sexual violence and improve, our quality of life. And also, I think it would save millions of dollars if we could prevent this. It's just kind of counteracting. And also, we just have to kind of slow it down and get it back to baseline.
If I could have all the cash my dad has had to pay for my therapy in my pocket, I'd be set for quite a long time.
Exactly.
So.
Well, I did look up some numbers, but it was like, it's just amazing how many millions of dollars we spend every year. I don't have it right in front of me, but it's just through child protective services, investigation, victims compensation, incarceration, sex offender. So if we can get this sooner, then much of the suffering and other intangible costs of like sexual violence experienced by victims and their families can be avoided. When we put our efforts on preventing sexual violence from even happening.
Right.
So I just feel like we need to improve more services too. Like people need more, because it's great that you are offering, but we just need more agencies.
We need it to be widespread.
Exactly, and reduce costs to victims and governments and society. So I guess our time went by so fast. I'm so thankful that the both of you came on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Do you two have any words of wisdom that you want to just share, like your final thoughts or words?
Honestly, whatever it takes to get you through the day, to keep yourself mentally in check, do it. And I'm not suggesting you drink a bottle of vodka in the morning or anything like that. But a healthy coping mechanism that can get you through the day. Yeah. Don't be ashamed of it if you like art or music, whatever it is. Just find your thing and stay true to yourself and know that it's totally okay to not be okay all the time.
Yeah,
exactly.
Everybody's got their thing. And that should be some sort of peace in our mind. And it's that everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to be not confused. Right. Everybody doesn't want to be hungry. Everybody doesn't want to be thirsty. That should bring us together a little bit. And wants to feel alone at all.
Totally. That's the truth. I mean, I think that out of all, I've seen over 70,000 people in this county, just in this community, but I've not met one person that didn't say, like, I just wish I could talk to somebody.
Right?
So that's why I'm doing this.
Second guess himself or something.
Right,
you
we
know,
start scrutinizing
yeah,
ourselves.
that's
It'd be great
where
if we
all
could.
this, and these huge subjects end up stopping with that too. So
Totally. That's
let's
their
face
big.
that.
But don't be afraid of talking about disagreeable things. I mean, I feel like having these compassionate conversations really builds inclusiveness and teaches others what you've learned. And I think we can do this by starting to treat everyone as more equal and just reduce discrimination. So let's create some conversations in a culture that are accepting of each person, and we can work toward prevention. And some ways we can work together, like we were talking about volunteering, checking in with ourselves.